What you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh. What you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
Foot Candle Films. Film news and reviews from two guys who really like movies.
This episode is brought to you by the Foot Candle Film Society. For a schedule of upcoming screenings and membership information, visit the Society's website at www.footcandle.org.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.TV podcast network. My name is Alan Jackson. With me, my co-host, Chris Fry. I cannot say across the table like I normally do, Chris, whenever we're actually in the studio recording together, because we are recording remotely. We may sound a little different today. I'm on one side of the country. Chris is on the other. We're using the magic of technology to bridge our voices together. But Chris, how are you doing, and how are things back on the East Coast?
So that's the thing. We're giving it more of a national scope and feel because you're on one coast. I'm literally on the other coast. So, yes, this is the country-spanning version of Foot Candle Films. So,
and I might also add, too, because I'm horrible at calculating time zone differences, that when we put this on the calendar, I said, oh, sure, yeah, that time that we put down for the first thing in the morning, East Coast time, sounds great. Let's go ahead and do that. And then, of course, I realized last night, I'm like, oh, this means I've got to get up really early on West Coast time to match that East Coast time. I could have changed it. I could have, I'm sure, texted you. I'm sure you would have been flexible to make an adjustment. But you know what? I'm dedicated to the show. I'm dedicated to our rigid schedule.
Nice.
I'm going to make this work. But I am talking a little softer volume than I might normally, because there are other people that maybe didn't see my decision to record this earlier as quite as well thought out.
Gotcha.
So I'm trying to be sensitive on everybody else.
Well, if you need to take a coffee break at any point, Alan, just let me know and I'll just talk randomly about some new Marvel movie coming up.
I will. Yes. I would love to hear you just talk randomly about some new Marvel movie coming up. That would actually be fun to do. Okay. So all banter aside, this is Foot Candle Films. This is our film review and discussion show here on the Mesh.TV podcast network. Chris and I are both with the Foot Candle Film Society and the annual Foot Candle Film Festival that we will be talking about shortly, coming up in September. But today, the most pressing matters are we have some films to review and we have a film to recommend for you. So we're going to be reviewing two films on today's show. The first up is going to be the film Mountainhead, which is an HBO Max. I guess that's still the name. HBO. It's called an HBO original, which I don't understand. I thought Max was their whole thing now, and now they're going back to HBO Max.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, I don't understand it. But anyway, it is a HBO original film that you can find on the Max streaming service called Mountainhead, starring Steve Carell, and also written and directed by Jesse Armstrong that we'll be discussing here in a moment. But we also have another film to review, which is one called Bono, Stories of Surrender. This is an Apple TV Plus film, a documentary about, yes, Bono, the person in the title of the film. So we'll be reviewing that film after we do Mountainhead. And then I think, Chris, you do have a recommendation for us of a film you'd like to recommend here by the end of the show that we'll get to at the end of the episode, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Good. It sounds like our plan. I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to make this remote recording work. So let's go ahead and get right into our first review, which is the film Mountainhead.
I hope you rich folks don't mind slumming it in the humble abode of the poorest billionaire in the gang. But this is exactly why I built Mountainhead.
Look at this place, Soups.
Thank you.
No, I just said look at it. No compliment implied. Simply look at it.
Here we go. All right. 4 presidents of tech. Get your net worth on.
59.
63 bill.
Feels good.
220 bill.
Guys, is this on every channel?
There have been a number of occurrences since your launch.
UN officials are now openly attributing the recent uptick in ethnic tension to powerful new generative AI tools unveiled last week on Tram.
I just want to say this is not on you, Venice.
Obviously, it's not on me. Why would you even say that?
Your platform was inflamed, a volatile situation,
Weapon stockpiling, some bank runs.
violence, chaos, and people are dying.
You're not real. Heads don't explode like that.
Heads don't explode like that?
No.
How do heads explode?
Chris, I think maybe 2-3 months ago, I don't remember when it was, but during an episode recording of Foot Candle Films, I was the one who brought up this film, Mountainhead, and said, hey, let's take a look. We're going to watch the trailer for this. I just heard about this film. Chris, you had not heard about it. We rattled through all the things that from the trailer and from all the the setup and premise of the film and all the people involved, all the positives about this film. Let me just kind of recap what we decided at that point were some of the really great positive attributes of this film that we were seeing.
First and foremost, it was not a Marvel movie. So that
it was not
good.
Marvel, but that was a nice little plus for you. You were happy.
Not a comic book movie.
Me, I was a little disappointed it wasn't, but that's okay. We just have differing opinions there.
Sure.
The premise of the film is it is 4 friends reunite during worldwide economic turmoil. As we get a little deeper into the description and cast, we find that it's written and directed by Jesse Armstrong, he of Succession fame. Succession being a TV show also on the HBO network that you and I are both pretty good fans of. We both like the series Succession. Most of America did as well. It was a big, well-regarded TV show with a lot of award winning. So writer-director Jesse Armstrong, that's a positive. The 4 friends I mentioned in the little tagline are actually 4 tech titans at the time of this movie taking place. So 4 people, all very powerful in the tech industry, getting together to come together for an annual, I think it was a poker weekend. It's kind of the intent of the weekend. While there is economic and countries in strife, turmoil happening in the real world, while they're getting together and trying to have a fun weekend. And of course, all of this kind of blurs together and impacts their relationships with one another. We got excited about the fact that Steve Carell stars in this film as one of those 4 individuals. We have Jason Schwartzman, we have Corey Michael Smith, and we have Rami Youssef playing the 4. That cast got us excited too. We're like, man, we like those 4 actors. We're kind of excited to see them work together. It's very much has a ripped from the headlines kind of feel, where there's obviously a lot of similarities between these 4 characters and maybe some people that we're very familiar with in real society and maybe ones who have been a little more newsworthy in recent couple of years. So all that mixed together, it just sounded like this is going to be a really, really interesting and could be a really, just interesting, I think is the best word for it, film that we were looking forward to. So Chris, with all that set up, how did Mountainhead work for you? I rattled off all the positives. I didn't mention any potential negatives. How did Mountainhead work as a film for you? Did it live up to all those positive things we were kind of raising it up on a mountainhead with? Or did it fall short of the mountain and was more of a valley or a prairie of some sort? Anyway, Chris.
What makes this film so interesting, as you've alluded to, is the fact that it is timely. But that can kind of work against it in a way unless I'm watching a documentary, I don't go to the movies or, watch a movie to kind of repoint things out to me that are already going on in my everyday world. I go to movies for escape. I think a lot of people do. And for entertainment, which for me is, usually an escape, not, making me overdwell on things that are already obvious in today's world. I liked this film, but it was a really tough watch in many ways because, the world is crumbling while these guys sit and eat really nice food and banter back and forth and basically have a bro weekend. It kind of rang a little bit too close to what sometimes as an American citizen in today's world, I feel like kind of is happening. And granted, this is a film, but the disregard that these people seem to have for anything outside of themselves, even during the course of the film, you see that they are, air quotes, friends or brewskis, I think it's her like Bruce. There's some term they keep using for like this group meeting that they do that essentially, as you mentioned, is kind of a poker weekend. And one of their slogans that they repeat at some points is basically no heels, meaning no women, no deals, meaning no deals are supposed to take place. It is supposed to be a mindless weekend of drinking and eating and just goofing off. But as you mentioned, because of the political implications, kind of the world coming to a head because of this internet, one of the people done by Corey Michael Smith, which I guess we'll just go ahead and say kind of a pretty thinly veiled version of Elon Musk.
I'd say very thinly, thinly veiled.
Paper thin, because his company is called Tram, and that's with 2 A's, so it's like Tram or whatever. And his company basically is, it's a social media company, and there has basically what comes to a head while they're on this weekend is he has released this new update allowing for the distribution of essentially fake content.
Yeah,
but it's not
AI-generated video content. Yeah.
AI-generated content, and you cannot separate that from news or from what is really happening. And they see this release happens. He then comes to this retreat, and then they sit around, look on their phones, and they're like, oh, that's happening. Well, that's too bad. And they see all these other events, and they're just kind of like, what? Well, that's too bad. And then they kind of mount this idea of like, oh, how are we going to fix this? And even that is just, I don't know, very, very troubling. So I've rambled on a little bit. I will say one comment before I toss it to you. The cast was really good. I felt like they were really, really solid. I knew Rami Youssef is a comedian, and I haven't really seen a lot of his stand-up stuff, or I haven't really seen him act, but I am aware of him. So he was kind of the one semi-unknown to me, but he was great. And the other three were really good too. And I guess if I had to say who I thought was the standout, I saw him in Gotham, saw him in Saturday Night. Corey Michael Smith playing the Elon Musk parallel. And I think, other characters I've never felt, but in this, I guess because of the role and how well he fell into it, just scary. He was really good, but scary in his thoughts and the things that he would say, and you're just like, wow, this guy needs to be a Bond villain. Okay, so that's me rambling on about it. What are your thoughts, Alan?
I wish I could say I was even wherever you were positive wise. I mean, you seem to have a fairly good experience with the film. I struggled with this one because for a couple of reasons, and I was the one most excited about it going into it. So it's not that I had high expectations. I felt like all the right elements were there.
Sure.
I'm just afraid that the film didn't quite know what to do with them as the course of the film ran through. I agree with you. I think the acting was all really good. I loved all the performances. I think they were great. And I also agree with you. I think Corey Michael Smith was, to me, a standout. Thought he was excellent. And the film, when the film starts, it is very much a standing around talking film. I mean, it is really four guys. It's a lot of it's very dialogue heavy, which is I have no problem with. I think
which Succession was as well. I mean,
absolutely,
yeah.
And then you've got the outside the way that the external influences of things that are happening in society is kind of creeping into their weekend, and how they're getting text messages, and they decide to pull up videos to see what's happening. It's all pretty engaging for a little while. I feel like it spins its wheels for a really long time, where it's just kind of just repeating the same idea of we get it. There are these things happening in the world, and it is not really affecting these guys as we would hope it would affect normal human beings. And they are obviously turning it into more business ventures, which is, again, it's an indictment on this kind of culture of these guys, that here the world could be burning outside, and their thinking is more who needs to have more power, who needs to be kind of taken down a peg within our group because of this. And I get it. And that's the satire. That's the kind of more commentary on today's society I expected to see in the film. But then the film, and I'll admit, it got a little repetitive for quite a while.
It does, because they kind of pair off, and they'll go talk and kind of I see.
But the film makes a change at about 2/3 mark. And I'm really torn, Chris, on this this little bit of this shift because
it's kind of an absurd, like, oh, this is where this is going now? Okay.
it turns very absurdist. And look, I thought the last third of the film was entertaining.
Mm-hmm.
I had fun watching it. But the whole time I'm watching it, I'm like, oh, this is not the film I felt like we were kind of set up for the whole first hour 15 of this movie.
Sure.
And I don't respect the film for making this change because it just became absurdist. The film was a smart film up to that point where I felt like it had something to say without being too beat you over the head with it. And then it literally beat you over the head with it in the last 20, 30 minutes. And it's like, I laughed. I thought it was funny. It was entertaining. The acting was great in that last 20, 30 minutes.
Sure.
But like, is this really the way we wanted to end this film? Because I felt like you had something really more profound to get into in that first half. And it's like, At the end of the day, it is basically an absurdist comedy that, yes, we know exactly what these people are like. It is laid out for us. There is no subtext to it at all. It is basically they act on all of these personas that we already assumed that they had, and that's how the whole film ends. And it's like, I don't know. It just felt disappointing to me that I wish either the film stuck to its guns and said, no, we're going to be a smart commentary on these guys, this kind of culture, and this kind of impact that their roles are having on society. Or let's make it absurdist comedy the whole time and just be like, no, it's just going to be caricatures and it's going to be really ridiculous situations and it's going to be, laugh out loud, funny, but with a little bit of a stinging bite to it. And it just, the change, I lost respect for the film when that change happened, even though I still did laugh a lot in the last portion of the film. So that's kind of where I am with it. It was just, it was disappointing, the choices that were made in the film, I guess, the way they decided to let it run out. And the only thing I could think of, Chris, is it's like the first hour is a Secession episode. Okay.
Yeah.
It's an episode of Secession. The last 20 minutes was not, because I don't think Secession ever got that absurdist with its storytelling. And it's almost like, well, I know how to do an hour. Once I get past an hour, I don't really know what to do. So I guess let's just really have fun and make something really over the top, storytelling. So that was my take on it. Again, I was just more disappointed in the choices made in the film, but all the elements were great. It's just the way they decided to assemble them together at the end of the day, I don't think served the film very well.
I think you've keyed in on something there. And I think you and I are actually kind of on the same page. And I think our rating is maybe just a tad higher. But I unfortunately, good and bad, when a movie is on, however they decide to call this, Max, HBO Max, just go back to the original just HBO and drop the Max, who knows?
I don't know.
But the benefit, it is. But the benefit of this and kind of the downfall is I did watch this in two pieces. Right, because of I was on vacation this past week. That actually, listeners, I know you're disappointed. We did not have an episode last week. Now everything is revealed. It was because I was on vacation.
Oh, that's right. We didn't, did we? I forgot we didn't have an episode last week. That would explain all the angry emails I've been getting the last week. So okay,
right. But so I watched this in two pieces, and actually, my wife watched the first piece with me, and then we had to go out to eat, and we went out to eat, and while we were eating, she's like, I think I'm good. I'm not enjoying it because it's just so making me think about and being frustrated, and it's not funny enough to help me kind of escape, and I'm like, I get it. So then I watched the second half without her, and when I finished, I was like, yeah, I'm glad you didn't stick around, because it would not have points. There are no redeemable figures. Of the 4 tech Silicon Valley people, I think all of them are pretty reprehensible. Maybe Rami Youssef's character, maybe less so, but still, how he comes around at the end of the film, I'm like, nope, there's nothing. They're all, like you said, they're all in it for themselves, and it's just very stereotypical and hitting the nail like directly on the head. Things are thinly veiled commentary. So that kind of but the thing that, like you're saying, that last 30 minutes or so, I think in the beginning, they're just keeping it very straightforward. And then to try to, do something unexpected, basically there's a murder plot.
Yeah.
But what was interesting to me about that murder plot is it kind of reveals, even though all these individuals are very smart, they're very able to like think in certain ways, but in the end all be all, because of the murder plot and how things kind of work out with that, it shows how actually, even though they're great thinkers, they all are kind of ineffectual in some ways because they can't actually achieve what they want to achieve. So it's kind of making showing them to be very powerful, but yet at the same point be very impotent and be very ineffectual. And so, but it takes it to the ridiculous extreme. So
that's the problem is I think you could have accomplished that without it having to go quite to the extreme it did. And I'll give you a great example, Chris, since you already opened up the plot saying it was a murder plot.
Right.
There's a moment in this film, and it's about at that 2/3 mark where 3 of the 4 characters are together meeting.
Yes.
And one of them says, I think we're going to have to kill him. And I honestly thought for like the next several minutes that it was all metaphorically. Like, okay, we are going to kill him. Like, we are going to make him suffer business-wise. We're going to take him down a peg. We're going to find ways to kind of screw him over. And I'm like, okay, I get that. That is what this film is doing. And when I did realize after a few minutes that no, they're literally talking about murder, that recognition was almost like that's what I felt like was wrong with the film. It's like the film was setting me up to be, I still think it could have been a fun comedy of trying to find ways to destroy this person business-wise, financially, reputation, whatever. But to make that switch and go right into, nope, it's murder. And like, okay, nothing I've seen in this first hour makes me think that that's where these 4 individuals are in their lives and all.
Gotcha.
And we have a whole subplot with the Steve Carell character at the beginning about his health and about kind of what's going on, which I thought was going to be something that was going to have more impact on how we view that character later on. And it really didn't. And it's like, it's almost like that last part of the film is like, forget any development or any kind of back end story that we thought was going to be helpful about these characters. No, let's just lay it out that these 4 people are bad people and they're doing bad things and done, so there's some backstory with Corey Michael Smith about his family, kind of his relationship with his child and, little things that are played for satire in the film, but obviously there's a little bit of some real deeper issues that they're kind of exploring with these characters. The health situation with
Steve Carell's character.
Steve Carell's character.
Yeah.
See, there's a lot going on, but it's like by the get to the end of the film, it's like, well, forget about all that. Let's just have fun with these 4 people trying to like be giant doofuses trying to like commit a murder plot. And again, it was funny. It was funny, but it did not fit the rest of the film that we've been set up to that point. And it just kind of lost all nuances at that point for me. So I more walked away very disappointed by the choices made, but the elements themselves are entertaining, but I just wish it adhered to something more sufficient.
I think so. Yeah. I think overall I think because I had a little bit of breathing room in my viewing experience, maybe that's why I'm a little bit more favorable. My biggest, I guess if I had to say complaint, was the fact that it bothered me that Corey Michael Smith was such a Elon Musk character. Okay. So, I mean, I thought he did a good job, but if they were going to make him such a 1-to-1, I wanted the other 3 to be a very recognizable 1-to-1. And maybe they were supposed to be, and I'm just not up enough to say like, oh, this guy's Mark Zuckerberg and this guy's but I felt like maybe there were hints, and you could say in a way, I guess, because of health concerns and the age, Steve Carell plays the oldest of these 4, even though, so I like you could say he was a Bill Gates maybe, but I don't think so. Like, I don't know. So it bothered me that I couldn't find a 1-to-1 for the other ones because I felt like
that's true.
And so I would have rather, okay, he could be a social media person, but don't have the social media person also be accused of false news or have children that are brought to him so he can see them for a few minutes, which apparently Elon Musk, they joke about he has tons of children. Like,
Right.
because they were hammering on that so hard, I was like, yeah, but that's not like quote unquote fair to the other people because I should be able to see that they are, their corollaries in reality. So that kind of bothered me a little bit.
No,
it made
I
me feel
see that.
stupid, honestly, because I was
that.
like, wait a minute, is this person who's that person supposed to be? But
Yeah.
I don't know,
From what I read afterwards is that they're all four meant to be some sort of conglomeration of different people and not meant to be one person representative. However, I agree with you. The Corey Michael Smith character, it's pretty hard to not look at him after a while and realize, no, they're going totally after Elon Musk on this one. So.
Yeah, like have Rami Youssef's character, who does have a relationship, and he's worried because his fiance goes off on like a girls' weekend. He's worried about her having have him be married, and have him have the kid thing. Like give some of the Musk traits to other people instead of just piling it all on Corey Michael Smith.
Right.
But I don't know. It was interesting. I'm glad I saw it.
No, interesting film. I think premise was well set up. Again, I agree. I think the acting was really fun to watch. And if you're okay with the tonal shift of the film and kind of where it ends up, that ending is really fun. I mean, it's a funny, I did laugh quite a bit in that last 20, 30 minutes, but I was laughing because of the absurdity of the situation, not because I felt like it was a great comedic ending to this film. I felt like it was a very disjointed ending and didn't really care for the shift in tone, but
gotcha.
There are elements here. If you could stomach that change and realize it's going to happen, and all these interesting subplots that are brought up early in the film are really kind of disregarded and forgotten about by the end. If you're okay with that kind of structure of a film, and there's a lot here to enjoy, but it just as a whole film, it just didn't work for me as well. So, yeah.
Gotcha.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, do you have anything else to comment on that, or are we?
No, I think that's something. It's worthwhile. I guess also, as you mentioned, if you're a fan of Succession and you like these actors, then yeah, I would say check it out. I wouldn't, I think it's, especially if you already have an HBO Max subscription, it's worth it. But I can see how expectations can maybe lower your satisfaction level. So.
Yeah. So, and again, I don't read other critic stuff until I've kind of formed my opinion. So I kind of knew where I was on this. I was kind of wanting to make sure, I want to make sure I'm not completely off base on this, because I felt like I just had such a odd reaction to this film because of the way it was structured and the storytelling motif it was using. It does seem to be pretty evenly split out there in the critic community as well. So I don't think we're alone on this. I think we struggled with some elements of it, didn't quite get the full enjoyment of this I think we were hoping for. And I think a lot of other people seem to be kind of in the same boat. So that made me feel a little reassured. I needed a little reassurance, Chris, to make sure I was not the grumpy critic out there that just didn't get it, type of thing. So no, I think we're in a very similar boat out there. So,
okay.
All right. Well, that is Mountainhead. That is an HBO original. I looked it up. It's HBO original.
Okay.
I still don't understand that, because at the time it was being made, the group was called Max, like the streaming service is called Max. I do not understand why they were still using HBO, but now they have gone, since making this film, they have gone back to HBO Max as being the name. So anyway, I don't understand.
All over the place.
Yeah, but whatever. It's Mountainhead. It's on Max, HBO, whatever the name of the service is. It's on your subscription. If you have that subscription, look, it's worth a watch, but just be prepared for some shifts and some maybe shifting of your expectations of what that film is meant to do by the end of the day. And but otherwise, I think there's some decent elements there to enjoy for sure. Okay, Chris, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And we'll come back for our second review and your recommendation. So if that works for you, let's do that. Stay tuned, everybody. We're going to be right back with Foot Candle Films here in just a moment.
Want to discover great podcasts or maybe even start one of your own? Welcome to The Mesh, Western North Carolina's podcast network built for creators and listeners alike. From local sports and business to comedy and culture, The Mesh is home to unique voices and fresh perspectives. Do you have something you want to say? The Mesh can help you bring your podcast to life with the tools, support, and platform you need to be heard. Check us out at themesh.tv, where great podcasts live and new ones are born.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Foot Candle Films here on the Mesh.tv podcast network. We had our first review of the film Mountainhead in the first half of the show. Now we're moving on to our second review, which is a documentary on Apple TV Plus featuring a Mr. Bono, Mr. Bono B. Bono, Mr. Bono, and the film's title is, and I just had it up here and I've already blanked on it. The title is Bono, Stories of Surrender.
These are the tall tales of a short rock star. Welcome to my Quarterman show.
Bono shares life stories and U2 songs in an intimate show exploring relationships with family, friends, and faith. Features in this documentary, or concert film, I guess you could say in a way, features unseen footage from his Beacon Theater performances of Stories of Surrender. Stories of Surrender was a biography that he released, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or so. And then I remember he was doing some limited theater performances of it. It reminded me of something Bruce Springsteen similarly had done on Broadway. He had kind of a limited run show where he, kind of like a storyteller's episode, if anybody's old enough to have known what that was on VH1, where a performer gets up and shares little background biography pieces and then plays a song. And then, does that for about an hour or so. This film was directed by Andrew Dominic, who is the director of Jesse James and the Coward Robert Ford. He's also did Blonde, which came out a couple of years ago, which was a Marilyn Monroe biopic. So now this is, that I'm aware of, I think he's done some music videos as well, but this was kind of his first live capturing of a theatrical performance. So to kick it off and throw it over to you, Alan, I'm going to ask the question that Bono's father asked to Bono when they would meet yearly at the pub. Anything strange or startling for you in this documentary?
No.
Okay.
But I will go ahead and say, this is my total disclaimer. I am probably the wrong person to be reviewing this film.
Oh, okay.
Because I think your personal relationship with Bono, U2, all that heavily influences how you feel about this film.
Sure. I mean, you can't escape that. You can't escape, like going to see a biopic. If you hate Johnny Cash and you see Walk the Line, then you're probably not going to respond to it that way.
Yes and no, Chris. I mean, if it's a biopic and its meaning is supposed to explore this life of somebody that you don't really know much about, and even if I hate the musician, hate the music, I still could find it interesting if I'm learning about this character.
Okay.
This is a different beast. This is not a biopic. It is selected stories that Bono has chosen to tell about himself and his life, telling it in a way that he wishes to share them, which is his prerogative. It's great.
Sure.
If you are a fan of Bono's music and U2 and him as a person or as an activist or whatever role may be, I think you get immensely more enjoyment out of this than if you're not. Gotcha. I do think this is one of those things where if you're not a fan, I could see people being very bored by this film because it is, even though it's done in a very interesting way, it's still not the most dynamically interesting thing to see. I mean, it's meant to be minimalistic to a degree where it's him on stage. He even comments early on that he's used to being on stage with all these huge effects and pyrotechnics and all this. And here on the stage, it's really a chair, a table, and him.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that. I like the intimacy of it. But again, if you're not already connected to the source material, I think it's going to be a tough lift for some people to appreciate as much.
Fair enough.
So therefore, I'm a bad critic for this because I love U2. I really admire Bono. I've always enjoyed them. I look for this film. I really like this film, but I also understand I am in a segment demographic that is tailor-made to like this film. So I can't speak for the rest of the population out there. I've got to imagine that everybody else will probably find it a little pedantic, a little self-serving, maybe a little boring. Yeah, there's all of that. And I could see people having that takeaway from it. I loved it, but that's me, what am I going to say? So Chris, I mean, I know you're relatively a fan of him and their music, maybe not as much as I am, but I think you're generally a fan. So I'd like to hear your take, because you may not be quite as exuberant going into this as I was.
So I mentioned the Bruce Springsteen, which I cannot remember the name of that film, but it was very, like I say, it was very, very, very similar. I think the difference is I don't think Springsteen had wrote a book. I think he just decided to do this thing. And Springsteen, I know of his music. I had the Born in the USA cassette when I was very young, but haven't followed his music since then. I'm aware of him. I know who he is. But I actually enjoyed that because I learned some things about him and could remember some of the songs that I was like, oh, yeah. I want to say it was maybe even shot in, no, I don't think it was shot in black and white. I don't know. I can't remember. But with this film, I do like U2. I've actually seen them in concert once. But I think over time it has been difficult for me to wrestle with specifically Bono. Because, he has this ego but then you don't know if it's a show or if he really is this way. Kind of like the whole element of him playing Mr. Mephisto or whatever in the zoo tour. It's like, yeah, but how much of that is really Bono? We don't know.
Right.
So I liked the monologue parts. I really liked that, but it was odd for me too that when he would get to the music, I found that almost always off-putting. I was like, I have seen Bono perform, whether videos of live performance or I saw him, live in person in concert one time. I was not interested in seeing any songs performed. And I don't know why. I guess maybe because I've just seen that so much that the only parts I found interesting was where he was just doing a monologue, because that's not what I'm used to seeing.
Yeah.
An interesting, which I don't know whose decision it was. I'm assuming it was Andrew Dominic, or maybe a cinematographer, or it was a conversation that he had with Bono. The black and white cinematography, it was interesting because it was very crisp and sharp and effective, but surprisingly, and it was probably a choice, intentional, it worked to make Bono more human. And I'll say, surprising to me, just come out and say it made him look old. Which I thought was a wise decision, because instead of trying to be this, ephemeral figure that's Bono and put him up on a pedestal and make him look just like he has looked since 1980 or whatever. No, you see some of the thinning hair and the wrinkles on his face, and it makes him more human. However, I will say there's a color flip at the end and kind of a reveal that did not work for me at all. And maybe because the rest of the film I thought was a little bit more grounded and not trying to do this fantastical type thing. I don't know. Ending didn't really work for me.
Okay.
So I guess I'm the naysayer a little bit more, but I still admire. Basically, it has to do with, and I think when the book came out, it talked about how it was kind of him reconciling his relationship with his father.
Right. Which, I think we all got to agree, those stories are the best part of this film.
Absolutely. And how that kind of ends up is you're like, okay. And it works. Bono got me. I'm like, okay, you got me, man. You win. So those were very, very effective.
Well, the comment on a couple of your points there. Yes, I agree. I don't think any of the musical performances worked. And they are all very abbreviated versions of songs, and they are all very stripped down, kind of reorchestrated versions of his music, which I get it. He's not there with U2. It's a different performance space. None of them felt inspired. None of them felt meaningful, really, I guess is the thing. So I'm with you. I thought the musical performances were lacking. I kind of feel like it would have been weird to have a Bono stage show performance without any music. So I get that maybe that was part of the thinking, is that, he's a musician, and what else? I don't know if we all want to hear him just talk for an hour and a half, just talk. I think I would have been okay with it because I think he's a good storyteller, but I get it. They're trying to sell this as a film too. And, you want to see Bono singing, so you get Bono singing.
Right.
The black and white, I did think was also a questionable move. I don't think it added anything to the film. I don't know. I almost would have preferred, because if the whole premise of the film is we're seeing him kind of more grounded and on stage and, just him telling stories. I kind of think seeing it in natural color might have grounded it even more and felt like, no, we really are just watching a guy sitting on stage. I think the black and white made it more cinematic, made it more of an event, which, again, I don't know if it reconciled with what we were seeing that he was presenting to us, the parts that really worked.
Right.
So I hear all that. I agree. The ending, the little fantastical element to the ending, it worked for me, but I get it. Okay. I totally get it. It doesn't. I kind of, by that point, I was bought into the film, so I'm like, all right, just take me wherever you want to go. By the end, I'm fine. But I also get it. If it's not working for people, that ending can be seen as a little extravagant, a little over the top, and doesn't match the tone of the rest of the film. It's tough, man. It's tough. I people not knowing Bono very well, or not being as absorbed in his career. There's already critics online. He came across as very self-aggrandizing, very, and there are some moments to that, but look, that's him. We kind of knew. I've followed the guy for 30 years. Like, yes, he is going to make things bigger, grander. He's going to take some credit for Edge's guitar playing style. Okay, yeah, I get that. That's just the guy. He's going to do that. But the film does take a little bit of a nice approach, I think, where at least about 2/3 of the film, there's a little moment where he's going off stage, and it's a very choreographed, obviously shot sequence of him off stage and all. But it's asking the question is, all these things I'm talking about myself as a performer, am I doing it purely for the fame and the glory, or is it real? And it's like, he's acknowledging that. He's like, look, I get it. That is a perception people have. That's a question maybe I even ask of myself on a daily basis. So I thought that was a little bit opening. I liked kind of that breaking the wall and saying, I'm going to look at myself in the mirror. I'm like, all right, who am I really? Like, what am I really? Is this all for show? Is this me playing up all these charities I've helped support and, music I've written? Is like, is it just for show, or is there really a deeper meaning to me? And he's willing to ask that question, which I thought the film was interesting to that degree. It kind of countered. And it's like, yes, I know what the public perception is of me. I know there's a lot of people watching this that think it's just a big ego boost for me. And he acknowledges that. So I'm like, all right, he's aware of it, and he's willing to talk about it openly in a film like this. I thought that was some nice notes to it. But again, I enjoyed the stories. I enjoy watching Bono perform in any respect. So again, I was a hook, line, and sinker for this film, no matter what. But I absolutely agree. It's problematic. It doesn't quite do what I think it should be doing with his stories. And I get how people who are not the biggest fans could find it very a little annoying. I guess that's a good way to say it. It could be a little annoying. I do think the stories, when he is allowed to let him tell stories and is not interested in trying to be a visually flourishing a film, and it's just letting him tell the stories, I think it works extremely well. So, but yeah.
So interesting. I don't know why you mentioned people, they know Bono's a performer. He's part of U2. That's his whole livelihood. That's his career. So to have a film where all he does is talk, people probably would have come away disappointed. And I don't know why I went into this thinking that I wouldn't see him sing because I'm an idiot, but I didn't really think there would be. So I mentioned how that was kind of a weakness, but I should have just known that. I think you touched on this, I really admired the use of minimal props on stage. Mm-hmm. He mentions his band members. He has chairs that represent them. He does, like in the pub, he uses those same chairs with just a little table, and he has like glasses of, whiskey and then a fake pint of Guinness, and he makes a joke about that, and kind of joking about the whole artifice of having just stupid little props on stage. Like he joked. I liked all that. And I think what would have worked better for me is if he did songs, which, you're right, it doesn't make sense to not have songs because it doesn't. If it would have been Bono and a guitar, if he wouldn't have had any other person on his, and I get it. It's kind of probably hard for him to pull off. Bono could probably do it, but that would have kind of fit with the minimalistic take on everything else, him singing, because, some of the elements, he had somebody playing a harp and all that, and it's just but that is, again, kind of shifting away and making it something bigger in a way. And actually, they use a LED screen behind them, like pulsating light and stuff. They're, again, kind of drifting back over into the, U2 arena stage. So, which I get, and I guess it's kind of hard to separate the two, which is why Bono is who he is. But it would have been more satisfying for me if they would have been able to keep it stripped down.
Yeah.
I think I'll comment on, I think one of the times you said, and for me, I was okay with the film, but it was the kind of the intermission between Act 1 and Act 2, when they did a little bit of him kind of monologuing and looking, and you mentioned that, and you said that kind of worked for you. I don't know, for some reason that actually kind of made me cranky. I think because I felt like it was kind of false modesty in a way. But overall, I still, like you've said, I found the story satisfying. So, if you're a U2 fan, this is going to be right up your alley. If you're not, if you want to learn a little bit about maybe him separated for the music, I think it's probably still might be entertaining for you, but you may not change your opinion if you think he's just a pompous celebrity. But
right. Well, and I think too that the film does, or some of the stories do rely on you knowing a good bit about U2 and Bono in general. And I tried to take it from a lens of, if I knew nothing about this band,
gotcha,
and this performer, would all the stories still work? And I think half of them would. I think there's some stories that, especially the ones having to do with the band's fame and kind of them becoming successful and even them forming, I think some of that might not have worked for people if you just don't know the band. So I think that having some of that background knowledge does aid some of the enjoyment. But I will say all the stories with the father and dealing with the mother and kind of anything having to do with his family, I thought were effective and stood on their own, regardless of your background knowledge of him. So yeah, half the film I think is very effective as a film for anybody to enjoy. The other half, I think you have to be a fan to appreciate or understand or not get annoyed by parts of it. So I think that's kind of where it is. Yeah.
Sure.
And I love a good black and white documentary or anything shot black and white. So I was kind of looking forward to seeing that. But did it seem to you that some shots were like very differently lit, and it just was almost a little jarring at times, kind of cutting between some different angles with that black and white cinematography. The only thing I can imagine, Chris, that I was reading up on is they shot this film to also be an immersive video for like the Apple Vision Pro people who have that headset where it's shot where you can actually.
So you feel like you were there with Bono. You were seeing this as a live performance. Okay.
So I think that impacted some of what we're seeing as far as the shots go, because I think some of it was being shot with that in mind. So I'm interested in seeing what the immersive version of it would look like and how that would play, and if that gives any more, I don't know, any more connection to what's happening and in the stage presence or not, or if it's more of a gimmick thing. I don't know. So
I guess hearing that, me liking this film, okay, but being enough of a U2 fan, I can imagine that were I able to watch it in that format with the VR headset Vision Pro, I think this would probably be like amazing. If they were able to carry it off, because it like that experience of like, oh, I get it. This is me. I don't know. It may. So I wonder if it maybe suffers a little bit from trying to.
Well, I always worry about a film that's being shot for multiple viewing experiences and whether or not that kind of hampers it in one degree or another. So shooting it to be an immersive video, does it still translate as a quote flat, traditional film or not? And again, I do think there's just some questions I had about some angles, some shots. Sometimes Bono, I feel like, was really dark on stage, not lit up as well. And then they cut to another angle where it's almost like he's blown out. He's lit so hard. And again, it was a little jarring to watch. And I don't know how much of it was because they're also shooting on different formats for different experiences. And, it kind of causes it to have to give a little give and take in one direction or another. I don't know. So, yeah, I think overall, I think it's safe to say, like, I think you summed it up right. If you're a fan in any way, shape, or form of the band U2, yes, I think there's enough here to appreciate and enjoy. If you already know Bono, you know the kind of character he is, you know the kind of person he is, you've heard him talk in interviews, you've heard him do monologues on stage during shows. I mean, then you're prepared for this. I think you're fine. Yeah. But I think it's a tough lift for people who are not really big fans, and there are some moments of wincing of Bono just being Bono, and it's a little much at times, and it's a little over the top at times when it didn't need to be. I think I'm coming out positive on it, but if I tried to pull myself away as a fan, I could look at it and say it's a kind of a mixed bag. At the end of the day for anybody else. So,
gotcha. Yeah, I think worth seeing, but still, maybe a little bit more of a mixed bag for me, not being as quite a devoted U2 fan, but yeah. I think it's fair to say.
So, but hey, look, both of the films we reviewed, we had issues with them. They didn't work perfectly for us, but they're both streaming films, meaning, we already have the subscriptions for the services. They're available to us. It gives you a little flexibility with your ability to criticize them, because it's like, well, look, you didn't put any extra money into seeing this than you were going to have anyway. Right. And they're available and you can watch them at your own convenience. You watched Mountainhead in 2 parts, and that was a comfortable way for you to watch it. So yeah, there's some of the advantages there. So we're going to kind of couch both of these reviews in the fact that, all right, they may not have worked completely as films for us. They may have had a lot of issues, both of them. But they are ones that are available to you now at any point to go and enjoy whenever you wish. So there's something to be said for that, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, well, let's move on. I think the only thing we have left on our episode is our recommendation. So we've done our 2 reviews. We don't have any news or trailers to share today. Honestly, Chris, I really haven't found any interesting news at all in the last couple weeks. From a film standpoint, I'm sure there's probably some things I'm missing. So if anybody has news out there that we've missed about upcoming films or ones that are being announced that we haven't talked about, hopefully there'll be a nice little accumulation of some news to get into next time we get together. But in the meantime, Chris, we always like it when you bring a film to the table for us, something that you can recommend as a film that you either recently caught up with or maybe saw for the first time or have just recalled from seeing in the past that you'd like to offer as a recommendation. So I'm going to turn it over to you for Chris's patented recommendation of the episode. What do you have for us today, Chris?
So this is a new film that has just come out. It released on the, I guess, Max, HBO, whatever. If you have a subscription to something that has HBO associated with it, you could see this film. It's a documentary called Pee-wee as Himself, directed by Matt Wolf. It just came out in 2025, released maybe 1 or 2 weeks ago. And it is told in two parts, which reminds me of the one that came to Apple TV Plus. I think last year. It was the Steve ! It was a Steve Martin documentary that was done in two parts. Mm-hmm. This one is done in two parts as well. 202 minutes of this documentary. The first part, so you can watch it in two parts. You have to, because that's how it was presented. So it's a film, but it's done in two parts. The first part basically shows the development of Paul Reubens, who's the actor behind Pee-wee, forming that character, and then it hitting the big time, and then it stops. And then the second part deals with his fame and hitting the big time, and kind of things that happened after that, and some of the controversies that surrounded him. And what I found, and then this is very upfront in the documentary too. And I think watching this so close to Bono, it made for a very interesting comparison because, yes, I know who Bono is. I know how he was famous. Paul Reubens as Pee-wee Herman. Yes, I knew that the guy, Paul Reubens, was an actor who was behind Pee-wee, but I wasn't really aware of what all went into making Pee-wee Herman and how Paul Reubens was an actor, a comedian before that, but then he shifted and decided to basically do performance art and make the conscious choice. No, I am no longer Paul Reubens. I am Pee-wee Herman. I will only do interviews as Pee-wee Herman. I do not discuss, if you ask me in an interview who Paul Reubens is, I don't know what you're talking about. It was this committed choice. And I was like, I did not realize that was really going on. And just the development of the whole Pee-wee show, which before it was a TV show, it was basically like a stand-up thing where a lot of the humor was adult. Phil Hartman actually was one of his major collaborators in the Pee-wee Herman show before it became a TV show. Didn't know that. So there were just a lot of things that I found very interesting. Now, one of the more interesting things, too, about the documentary is while he was filming this, the director, Matt Wolf, unbeknownst to him, Paul Reubens had been diagnosed with cancer and was undergoing treatment for cancer. He died. He passed away before the documentary was finished. And the director was like, I'm sorry, what just happened? He was notified that Paul Reubens had died and didn't know, So then he was tasked with trying to finish it. And you're like, well, okay. But what made that doubly hard is, and you see this in the interviews that he does with Paul Reubens. Paul Reubens had been wanting to make a documentary for a long time, but he wanted to be the director of the documentary. And all of his friends and other people said, no, Paul, you can't do that. You have to have somebody outside look at your life to do it fairly. And he's like, yeah, but nobody knows me better than me. I should be. And you learn Paul Reubens was very controlling, which is how he was able to do Pee-wee Herman for so long, of every aspect of his comedy, of his work, just very, very controlling. So he argues with the documentarian on screen. You see him say, well, why are you asking me that? He will, and he kind of becomes very contrarian to the documentarian. Sometimes you can tell he's doing it as kind of a joke. Right. But the other time, you can't really tell. He's just much more complicated than I would ever have given to Pee-wee Herman, who is not really, it's Paul Reubens. Much more intriguing and enigmatic than I would have ever given him credit for before. And there is something that the whole scandals that he was involved with, there was the exposure, public exposure in a porn theater. And then there was him having pornography in his house out in LA. And I remember those two controversies and how those were handled in the news. And the other thing that he basically says at one point, the reason why I wanted to have a documentary made about me was I'm gay. And Pee Wee Herman was not gay. Pee Wee Herman was just, a weird individual who did quirky things. But he basically was saying, like, the way I was treated when I tried to keep that a secret. And then, it's like they were demonizing me. So it's a very interesting perspective. You're like, okay. And then things kind of in today's world and the way, it's a lot more, I don't know, the way things are handled is different. It was fascinating. It was fascinating just to see that from like a perspective. So all that to say, Pee-wee is himself. It is in 2 parts. It's over 202 minutes, but I found it really, really fascinating, especially if you remember Pee Wee Herman and like his career after those incidents happened. And like choice, he was in like a Batman film. He was in, just I don't know, very interesting things. So Pee-wee as himself, I recommend it.
Well, you are not I haven't not seen it, but I have heard from multiple people it's really good, very interesting. It does what a documentary about a public figure should do, which is really help you understand that person, the real person behind the persona that we've all seen and gotten so used to. So it's been added to my ever-growing watch list. It is a longer watch, so I'm going to have to find some time to do that. But no, I'm very, very anxious and curious to see that now. So thanks for that recommendation.
Sure.
Very good. Pee-wee as himself on HBO Max, whatever.
Yes.
Once you finish watching Mountainhead, you can navigate on their little menu to somewhere where you'll find Pee-wee as himself. Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, Chris, I think that wraps us up for today. If anybody has any thoughts, feedback, or questions for us, how can they get a hold of us? And I know you're also going to put in a plug for our festival as well. But go ahead, Chris, take it away.
Sure. So you can send an email to info@footcandle.org. You can also leave a voicemail via our contact page on the mesh.tv website. You can follow us on Facebook, Foot Candle Film Society, Instagram and Threads, Foot Candle Film, Blue Sky, and Twitter. We're just at Foot Candle Film. Al and I are also on Letterboxd, where we try to keep track of what we're seeing, leave quick takes sometimes. Do us a favor. If you like the show, consider giving us a star rating, write a review, or share with friends on whatever service you receive your favorite podcast on, because it'll help us reach new listeners. We would always appreciate that. Last but not least, Alan teased it, the 2025 Foot Candle Film Festival, running this year September 19th through the 28th. It's going to be a great festival. It'll be our 11th festival. It's held in Western North Carolina. It's different locations in and around Hickory, North Carolina. If you're going to be in the area, we strongly suggest you check us out. It's going to be a great one.
Yeah, should be a lot of information coming out about that coming out in the month of July. So here in a few more weeks, be on the lookout as we put out a lot of information about the festival and tickets go on sale and everything else. But as Chris said, it will be a good time. So we highly encourage you to come join us. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We will be back next time with more movie reviews, maybe some news, and maybe some recommendations. Who knows? We'll find out. But I think we're going to be back in the same state.
I believe so.
I believe by next week we should be back in the same studio. So apologize for everybody for any audio weirdness as we're doing this, but thank you for technology. Thank you to the internet for allowing this to happen remotely like it did. And we'll look forward to talking to everybody next time. Take care.
See you in the ticket line.
Watch films in the company of like-minded people in the dark. Watch films in the underground. We won't let anyone know where you are. The films that don't make it to Carmike at the mall, or ones that were famous when Grandpa would watch films out of the reverence of the heritage of an art. Watch films through the courtesy of Foot Candle Film Society.
Special thanks to Carpal Tuller for the show theme music. For more about Carpal Tuller, visit www.carpaltuller.com. You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.